If President Trump were the architect of that, I'd nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
We are on the precipice of a meeting between President Trump and President Putin in Alaska. Drawing on your experience as Secretary of State, if you were en route to Alaska, what would you be looking to get? What does an acceptable deal look like?
He is not meeting with a friend. He is meeting with an adversary, and an adversary who wants to see the destruction of the United States and the Western alliance. But if he could bring about the end to this terrible war where Putin is the aggressor, invading a neighbor country, trying to change the borders, if he could end it without putting Ukraine in a position where it had to concede its territory to the aggressor, had to, in a way, validate Putin's vision of greater Russia, but instead could really stand up to Putin to make it clear there must be a ceasefire, there will be no exchange of territory, and that over a period of time, Putin should be actually withdrawing from the territory he seized in order to demonstrate good faith efforts, let us say, not to threaten European security. If President Trump were the architect of that, I'd nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Come on, guys. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Thank you, press. Let's go.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you.
The lion, worthy is the lamb, mighty is the lion, worthy is the lamb, mighty is the lion, worthy is the lamb, mighty is the lion, worthy is the lamb.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only James Williams Dog Waters is back, and I'm going to say this. Someone must have told people that they can compliment and appeal to Donald Trump's nice side, and he won't put them in prison. But we have Hillary Clinton coming out, probably fresh off of some child sacrifice, and she's saying, "Oh, if Trump can stop the war between Russia and Zelensky, or Russia and Ukraine, then he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. I'll nominate him." Trick. I think you need to come to the realization that Donald Trump worked for the American people. Guys, if it's one thing we came to understand over the Epstein files is this: Donald can say what he want to say, but he gonna have to do what the people want him to do. Now, I'm gonna lay out for you why this is a trap. This is one of those things where the deep state feels like if they come out and compliment Trump and he accepts those compliments, then his people are going to get up in arms and give bad reports and go crazy. That's why they're doing it. They're doing it everywhere. Brennan is doing it today, saying if he can bring an end to the war, then it'll be, he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. And they're signaling that what he wants, the thing that he covets, is that Nobel Peace Prize, and they know that's the thing that he covets. So they're saying, yeah, if he does this, then he'll get the prize. But no. Hillary, your ass going to prison. And if you don't go to prison, there's going to be hell to pay. Yeah, it's going to be hell to pay if you don't go to prison. You know what I'm saying? And if you watch the Bret Baier interview, Bret Baier brought up what Hillary had to say. And you could see what Donald was kind of like, oh, if she said that, that's a nice thing of her to say, blah, 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 blah. But I'm telling you now, Donald, don't make this mistake, because it's going to be a massive problem, boy. People going to be pissy.
I actually was encouraged by the events of the last several months. First of all, the NATO commitment by individual member states to increase their defense spending is very welcome. It's something that prior administrations have certainly sought, and I think it's great that we are seeing these commitments that now have to be followed through on. the willingness of European countries to support Ukraine, and by doing so, buy American weapons in order to provide them to the Ukrainians. I think all of that is a very good signal that there is beginning to be a better understanding, both by the president and the people around him, as well as by the leaders of our European allies, that there can be common ground amongst us. And the kind of dismissiveness that we saw in the first Trump administration has been replaced by a much more obvious working relationship to the good of European security, transatlantic security, and hopefully Ukrainian security. So I'm actually encouraged.
I'm going to say this. Donald Trump cannot give these people any quarter, because these people, and she didn't say what I thought she was about to say. I'll show you on Gateway Pundit what I'm talking about. Hold on. These people can't be given any quarter, because they didn't give us any quarter. They didn't give him any quarter. They tried to kill him. They tried to kill him. And you can't give these enemies any quarter. You see, normally in engagements, you kind of lay out the rules of engagement. Okay, there's certain, you lost and this is over. We're not going to go any further than we've been going with this. But no. They decided to try and assassinate the man. Now, they didn't just try and assassinate him once. They raided his house with a kill team and tried to assassinate him in his house in Mar-a-Lago. That didn't work. Then they tried to blow up his plane. That didn't work. Just recently, a woman had C4. This is just last month. They found the woman with C4 sewed into the side of her purse. Remember, there was this thing about the security, the Secret Service detail person whose wife was on the plane, tried to smuggle his wife on the plane. No. There was a woman who had C4 seamlessly sewn into the side of her purse, and the Secret Service caught it because they were still trying to assassinate him. That Butler, Pennsylvania, yeah, we all know about that. But they've been trying to whack this man. And so now here they come out publicly as things are coming down the pipeline, as indictments are coming down the pipeline. Here they come publicly trying to put on a nice face. Oh, I've said nice things about Donald Trump. And it's not for me and you guys. So do not let yourself get upset. This is for their constituents to shift the narrative so their constituents can say, well, Hillary never said anything negative about Donald. She never did anything, because their constituents have the memory of a gnat. That's what they're counting on. First, Hillary Clinton, the twice failed presidential candidate who never got over her humiliating loss to Donald Trump, is suddenly praising Donald Trump as a peacemaker and openly admitting she'd nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize if he can end the bloody war in Ukraine, a war that they started, by the way. And now, shockingly, Obama's disgraced former CIA director, John Brennan, the same D-state operative who pushed the Russia collusion hoax to undermine Trump's presidency, is following Clinton's lead, saying he too would support Trump for a Nobel if he pulls it off. Now, you got to understand, somewhere along the line, Donald has let everybody know that he won a Nobel Peace Prize. And honestly, the man deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Remember, Barack Hussein Obama got the Peace Prize for doing a damn thing. He went to Egypt and gave a speech, and they gave him the Nobel Peace Prize. So he's coveting this prize for some reason. And so this is a weak spot for him that they're using. It goes on to say, honestly, if he could bring about the end of this terrible war, if he could end it without putting Ukraine in a position where it had to concede its territory to an aggressor, could really stand up to Putin, something we haven't seen. But maybe this is the opportunity. If President Trump were the architect of that, I'd nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize, Clinton told host Jessica Tarver. She emphasized her stance, adding, because my goal here is to not allow capitulation to Putin. And as we read this, and the spirit of revelation hits me, this is them suing him for peace. This is a public negotiation. The Nobel Peace Prize. If you don't do this, then we'll give you peace. You hear it? Let me read it to you again. Honestly, if he could bring about the end to this terrible war, if he could end it without putting Ukraine in a position where it had to concede its territory to the aggressor, could really stand up to Putin, something we haven't seen. But maybe this is an opportunity. If President Trump were to architect that, I'd nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize, Clinton told host Jessica Tavarro. And you have to remember, the Ukraine is the place where they embezzle all their money. It's this, I mean, it's the center of money laundering. So they're saying, okay, Donald, if you can just leave things as it is, just leave it as it is, and bring peace about under these terms, we will give you peace. It's the same thing when Netanyahu went, and Netanyahu was like, you know, we're going to give you the Nobel Peace Prize. Here's the nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. Can't none of these people give this man no peace. The whole prize, the whole Nobel Peace Prize is some bullshit anyway. Can't none of these people give you peace? You can't give somebody an award for peace. God gives peace. It's the height of pride anyway. You know what I'm saying? He ain't do nothing. God did it in the first place. All right, over at NBC, Trump hater Nicole Wallace tried to mock Trump's effort, asking if there was even a chance of success, but Brennan is now conceding to the point, albeit through gritting teeth. His pure Trump derangement syndrome won't allow him to openly admit that Trump has the deal-making chops to pull it off, but he knows the truth. I think the odds are probably 1 out of 100 at best, Brennan said before conceding, but I would second the nomination for a Nobel Peace Prize if in fact this happens. Of course, Brennan couldn't resist adding that the odds were 1 out of 100. Let's take a listen to Brennan, who should be in prison. Like, nobody. If these people were to nominate Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, they would be attaching their wickedness to the prize. I wouldn't want your damn nomination, you wicked bastard. You wicked. Look at it. And I told you guys, anytime you see people with lips that split way over here, they a demon. Look, you see them lips? Look how the lips are way over there. It's a damn demon. I don't want no prize for no damn demon. In fact, Donald don't need a prize. He don't need the Nobel Peace Prize. I know he wants it, but Donald, you don't need that. That's not a necessity. Your prize is your nation being strong. You don't need it. Now, the pride of life and a man like him, yeah, he wants it, but you don't need that damn prize. You don't need it at all.
Made me laugh the first time I heard it, but the truth is, Trump has never negotiated something this complex, and he certainly never asked Putin to give something back, to give back occupied territory and negotiate a ceasefire. Where do you put the odds of being able to convince Putin to do that after all of this very public pomp and circumstance in his honor?
I think the odds are probably 1 out of 100 at best. There is no way Vladimir Putin is going to give up the territory that he has gained in Ukraine willingly. This is not something that is in his personality to be able to just withdraw and to acknowledge publicly that he made a mistake. Again, Donald Trump, who believes he's the world's best negotiator, that's why I think he realizes that this is something way, way beyond his ability to even influence in a very positive direction. So what's going to happen in these meetings, I don't know. I hope that Donald Trump stays strong, pushes for a ceasefire across the board, not just an air ceasefire, but on the battlefield. Freeze that so we can stop some of this suffering. But I really don't see Vladimir Putin reneging or pulling out of the territory that he's in now. But I would second the nomination for a Nobel Peace Prize of Hillary Clinton for Donald Trump, if in fact that happens. But I see the chances of that being next to zero.
What are you thinking if you're President Zelensky today to have been excluded from?
You know, in order to truly understand what's going on, you have to really think about this. Who actually controls Ukraine? It ain't damn Zelensky. It's all these people who are publicly commenting on what should and shouldn't happen and weighing in their opinions on it. Remember, Ukraine was overthrown under Obama with Hillary Clinton as the Secretary of State. And so they're trying to openly negotiate with Donald. Zelensky is a puppet. We know this. So Brennan, Comey, Clapper, this is them flexing themselves. Well, you know, if he did A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then yeah, I would give him the Nobel Peace Prize. There would be peace. Now, Donald, what you need to do is arrest every one of these rank devils and put them in prison. And then do what you need to do. Screw the Nobel Peace Prize. It makes no sense. You don't need it. Besides history, you're going to get that one way or the other. Because in 6 months, you've done what no president has been able to do. Now, everybody's been talking about him and Putin and a flyover with Putin. And, of course, you want to show your power and your might to the other probably largest, maybe the third largest army. No, he ain't the third largest. The second is going to be China. And then we come India. Then we come Russia. But nonetheless, one of the largest superpowers in the nation, in the world. The second largest nuclear superpower in the world, for sure. Of course, you want to show your muscle. But what I saw when I watched the footage of their meeting, two things stuck out to me. Those were two men who had a relationship. You could tell by the way they interacted with each other. Those two guys had a relationship. And everything has been done to drive a wedge between the two of them. And you know how it is with relationships with people. When you try and drive a wedge between people, the relationship actually becomes stronger because they get to know each other. Because when they start talking, if it's a contentious conversation, I get to know you better in when there's contention than when there's peace. I get to know who you are, how you think, and how you feel. I get to understand you. And there's an understanding between these two people. That's why the media was so pissed off yesterday when they did not allow them to ask questions. And I wouldn't allow them to ask any questions because why would I let the American media question the president of Russia when they can't treat me with respect? I wouldn't allow you to ask any questions whatsoever. Nothing. And that's what they did. They said, look, nope, we made our joint press conference. We out of here. And then you saw them go into this feverish kind of retard farting in the bathtub state. Well, they called it a press conference, but, you know, in the press conference, you know, people get to ask questions. They get to ask questions about what's going on now. Y'all don't deserve to do it. You don't deserve it. It's not a given. And I commend the president for doing that because these people's a bunch of damn rank devils. You don't allow rank devils to interfere with your negotiations. They're lucky that they even had a press conference. If I was president, I wouldn't even have had a press conference. He would have got back on his plane. He'd have went on about his business. Well, what was going on? It's a matter of national security. We're not going to talk about it. And then you notice that as they didn't get an opportunity to ask any questions, the next thing they did was they filled that void with speculation and lies. And, you know, Donald looked like Putin looked like he was stronger than Donald, and Donald looked like he was afraid, and this. Can you imagine what they would have done if they would have been able to get real sound bites? Come on, man, it would have been crazy. So no, Donald J. Trump, you better not make the mistake of letting these people off the hook. Yeah, that's going to be hell to pay by the American people if you let these people off the hook. And that's just that.